Good afternoon, and welcome to this technical session for the Charter of Professional Auditors. We're very happy to see you here in person. For some of us, it has been a long journey before we could put a name to the face. We have exchanged hundreds of emails, we have had some virtual sessions, but this is, for some of us, the first time that we really meet in person. And for one, I am deeply grateful for this. It's an honor to finally get to meet you. Today, the technical session will be focused on the new developments of the program. Some of you have been involved in the program from the very beginning, back in 2008. We have come a really long way, but you have been part of it. Your input, your feedback has helped us sorry, my words are gone, but shape the program. And now we're in a new phase where we are changing a little bit the program again, and you guys, your input is very important for us, so this is the opportunity to exchange views. With further ado, I will introduce Monica, that will want to give a few words to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, dear members of Charter of Professional Auditors. As Jessie said, it's so nice to see you face in face. Of course, we have seen many of you through the different teams and calls, but it's just, lovely to see you. I think we will have to still go through some introduction later on because, of course, some of you we recognize, some of you maybe we don't recognize. Of course, we know the names, but I don't think that we can always match the name with the face. But however, I will just take 5 minutes because of course, these two sessions that we're going to have today and tomorrow, they are part of the, we call it, let's say, recurrent training. Yeah? So we wanted to make sure that basically we increase harmonization amongst the auditors, but also we support a consistent standards interpretation. You have been doing hundreds of audits over the past couple of years. Many of you have been part of the previous model when the audits were done by member airlines. Yeah? I can see a couple of faces and see that you still work for airlines, so you of course see the topics from airlines point of view. Back in 2018, we switched to the charter. And of course, that changed a lot because many of you are now representing ground handling company, either the airline or you are freelancer entrepreneurs. So of course, we are coming from different backgrounds and we are having maybe different views on operation. We have different experiences, different skill set. So it is very important for us that we drive a change. Back in July 2021, IATA went through a little bit of reorganizations, and finally now we have all the subject matter experts within IATA under one team. So we have created one big ground operation team. ISEGO team has merged with the ground ops team. We have also merged partially the quality, all the people that have been doing also oversight of the auditors and doing the quality control. Now we also have the entire baggage portfolio. So the ground operation team has been growing. And of course, we have been also, we got Willie on board. We got a new CEO. And he was not happy, based on the feedback from the airlines, with all, the way how our ISEGO has been, let's say, managed in the past. There were some challenges. So there are some great things that we have done and achieved, but definitely there were some challenges, primarily from, the airlines' point of view. The airlines were not fully buying into the concept, and we still have been facing a lot of duplicate audits. Yeah, so the ground handlers have been suffering. So despite going through the accreditations, they still receive a lot of audits. So we have been asked to do another changes, and the changes were consulted with many airlines and ground handlers, and I just would like to repeat what the changes are that you can go to the technical session that will be delivered by the team of the subject matter expert. So the first basically change is that somewhere next year we will totally discontinue the GOSM. Yeah, so the ISAGO standards manual, as you know it today, won't existing. We still have to figure it out, how we're gonna transfer the organization and management section, but basically all the operational sales section will disappear, and the checklist that you will be using during auditing will be a simple implementation checklist that will be basically following the IGOM, yeah? And again, you will hear much more about that. Another change is that the ISAGO audit will be pretty much, at least on the station level, it will be a compliance audit. So on a station level, it will be compliance. What it means compliance? You will be assessing if particular ground handler at particular station follows IGOM, if IGOM is properly implemented. Of course, the scope will be bigger than IGOM. It will cover, for example, also the AHM Chapter 11 training. It will also cover the SMS requirements, but they will be a clear, I would say, baseline standard. So it's not like today, provider shall have a process and any process suffice. No, you will be auditing that IGOM is being followed, that Chapter 11 is being followed and implemented. So that's the major key change. And this is also why you have to have access to AHM, you have to have access to IGOM, you have to know it, you have to read it, you have to monitor all the changes that will come each year, because that will be essential for your assessment. The second major change is that the documentation will be significantly reduced. Yeah? So we want to make sure that you are focusing on implementation. We will be celebrating 15 years history next year. So after 15 years, all the ground handlers have their processes in place, they have a system, so we don't have to focus that much on that. Of course, we will do a little bit of sampling, but again, we have now a portal. Portal has an IGOM. Tomorrow, next year, Portal will have also the training and maybe ORM. So the ground service providers will be asked to basically do the gap analysis. They will verify that all their processes are documented. We will do a simple remote check of documentation, and once you go on a station, you will be using simple checklists focusing on implementation. So that's the second major change. Another change on the headquarter level, we will be still seeing or auditing the system. So we will be definitely looking at what is the management system, what is the risk, how the organization is managed, from ground service providers' point of view, primarily focusing on SMS and QMS and some of the organizational aspects. Lastly, also, we are developing the registration scheme that will be on OneSource. If you are not familiar with OneSource, I will not explain it at this moment. Just go on IATA website and click OneSource. It's basically a database of ground handlers, and all the different validation certification schemes are already there. So if we have a ground handlers that went through a certification scheme like a CIV Pharma or Life Animals or Perishable, so there are different certification schemes, ISAGO will be there as well. So we are merging, so the ISAGO registry will disappear next year, and everything will be on OneSource. So if any airline goes OneSource, they will see the ground handler and all the different certification accreditations that are there. Also, the OneSource will be a platform through which any airline will be able to request access to the certificate, access to the report, so it will be more, let's say, user-friendly, I would say, and also transparent, and we will try to measure some analytics and see how much the different audit reports can be used. I'll stop here because there is more changes. I could be talking about them, another 2 hours, but that's not the point. I just wanted to highlight that you have it somewhere in your head, because Santi and of course our SMEs and the technical groups will be speaking a lot about the technical details. So just keep it in mind that documentation remotely via the portal, sampling only, checklist, implementation, and it's a compliance. So those are the key changes and messages, and I would like to make sure that you have it in your head, because that's important, once you're going to be listening to them. And with that, I'll leave it with them, because I've been talking way too much. Thank you.
Welcome to Paris. Thank you very much for being here. Exceptional opportunity to have you all here. As Monica was saying, we not know all of us, and it would be good if you stand up and introduce yourself. But I know it's going to take a bit of time, but we think it's needed, because also among yourselves, because you have not always worked among yourselves, And then also the ground operations team is here. If we could start with this table, please. Yeah. And please keep it short because
Steve
it's like almost 60
Donata,
of us.
I'll see you more tomorrow when we talk IGOM.
Getso Miyazawa from Swissport, looking forward to this section.
Caroline Odiambo, I'll be presenting.
Gurdeep Singh from IATA.
And Dave Rogers from Swissport.
Francisco Solovestoa, Copa member from Guatemala.
Hello, Viorica Ursache, Copa member from Romania.
Hello, Marta Mottola from Italy, Copa member.
Hello, Paweł Malawko, Warsaw, Poland.
Copa member, my name is Sil Muda from Zimbabwe.
Rob van Erdwijk, Copa member from Holland.
Hello, I'm Thierry, Copa member from France.
Hello, I'm Thar Sakarat, Copa member from Jordan.
Hi everyone, George Ragua, Copa member from Uganda.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Sondlovo from Zimbabwe, Copa member.
Hello, I'm Makusia Arthur, Copa member from Ghana.
Hello, Tian Stray from Cape Town, South Africa.
Good afternoon, Amy Letting from Nairobi, Kenya, Copa member.
Hello, Talha Göksel from Turkey, Copa member.
Good afternoon, Ferhan Bugay, Copa member from Istanbul.
Hi everyone, Taner Şahin, Copa member from Turkey.
Good afternoon, my name is Penina Dubai, Copa member from Kenya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eunice Washira, Copa member from Kenya.
Hello, good afternoon. Monique Havermans from Belgium.
Hello, Jan Abraham, Copa member from Czech Republic.
Hello, Indrajit, Copa member from United Arab Emirates, Dubai.
Hello, I'm Harpreet A.D. Singh, Copa member from India.
Good afternoon, I'm Irina Samarina from the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Hello everyone, Dimitri, Copa member from the UAE.
Good afternoon, Dieter Hermann from Austria, Copa member and ISEGO agent.
Hello, Milan Mojovic from Serbia, Copa member.
Hello everybody, Dragana Lazic from Serbia, Copa member.
Hello all, I'm Luis Alves, Copa member from Portugal, Lisbon.
Hello everybody, I'm Gabriele Brocchi from Italy, Copa member.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. I'm Shijit Perendotumandil, Copa member from United Arab Emirates. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Andrea D'Amico from Italy, Copa member.
Good afternoon, I'm Windrose Mungai, Copa member, Kenya.
Good afternoon, Alexandra Matkovic from Serbia, Copa member.
Hello everybody, my name is Jovica Jovicic, also known as JJ from Belgrade, Serbia.
Good afternoon, Max Corsi, Copa member and ISEGO agent.
Arantxa Porras from Spain, Copa member.
Jean Constantino, Copa member from Canada.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Nunley, Copa member from the US.
Hi, good afternoon. René de Boer, Copa member, Netherlands.
Good afternoon, Barakat Yosef from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Copa member.
Hello everyone, Musef Tamlak, Copa member from Norway.
Hello everyone, I am Atul Garg from India, Copa member.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharat Tijoria, COPA member from India. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Raj Vijay from India, COPA member.
Hello, everyone. Saeed Ibrahim from Egypt, COPA member.
Good afternoon. So I am Gilbert from France, COPA member.
Daniel Stocky, COPA member and ISEGO agent from France.
Good afternoon, COPA champions. This is Ahmed Mahanna. I'm based in Dubai. Glad to see you.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Tahir Fouad from Egypt, COPA member. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Medhat Youssef, COPA member from Egypt.
Hello. Hello. Hassam Shatnawi from Jordan, COPA member.
Good afternoon. Mohammed Al-Assaf from Jordan.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Isa from Jordan, COPA member.
Is there any other COPA member in the room that is not sat by the tables? If not, we stop the presentations right here. Thank you very much. I would like you to know my colleagues in ground operations because I guess you already saw Eva presenting, and you saw Lisa Maxnick that are part of the ground operations team. Monica already introduced lots of changes, and there's not much to say about all those changes, but on behalf of the whole team, we want to say thank you. Thank you for all these years of hard work. If one of the best achievements of ISEGO has been COPA, and COPA because since COPA was implemented, IATA took control of the COPA auditors, the performance and the reliability of the audits increased dramatically. And the recognition from airlines, GSPs, and other sectors within the aviation industry mentioned that since the GSPs became ISEGO, they could realize about the change in the management. That was a very, very, very good compliment. Monica has mentioned that we have done surveys. We are doing surveys. We want to have more communication with you. We want to have direct communication with you because you work with us, as you are important stakeholders into the program, and we are facing big challenges ahead with all the changes that we are going to implement. And we need you because you are our ambassadors. You are our front line. You are the ones that are going to convince the GSPs that the work that you are doing, and we will take care of the airlines to convince them that the work that you are doing adds value to their processes, adds value to their business. And that has been proven during the last years. So thank you on behalf of IATA for all your work. We look forward to continue working in the same line. That's why we want you to be here. We want you to know more about what is happening in the industry. We want you to be aware. We want you to be to understand why we are doing the changes. In the first session with the CEOs, you realize how important is standardization as the key for simplification. On those lines, the airlines ask us to simplify and harmonize. So to achieve that, we have to simplify our procedures, GOPM. You heard about the GOSM. The contents of the GOSM are still going to be there, and that's the main reason for today's part of the recurrent training, because you have multiple sessions, and this is one of them. The introduction that I'm doing is to link what we are doing in terms of aligning requirements with AHM and IGOM, which my colleagues Gurdeep and Caroline will present later on. We have to make the program scalable, agile, and future-proof. So yes, again, we are doing changes because we need to meet the expectations of the GSPs and the airlines. This year we are doing a lot of advocacy with the airlines, with the CAs and the airports. Those are our main targets for this year. It's also a target for us to increase the footprint of ISEGO globally. And that we will work together with the GSPs. At this time, we have 28 members. Four more are about to sign. And we're in contact about 15 more airlines that are in the process of signing. That's a big responsibility because that means a lot of trust in ISEGO. And that is our trust in you, in your work. In the last session, Jessica gave you like many hints on where we need to improve. Where I would be like maybe more interested is that you take the role of being that, our ambassador for ISEGO, that it's clear what we are seeking with the ISEGO audit. Monica mentioned about the standards. So we want to simplify, we want to make more objective the assessment of the standards. Now the standards are looking for a process, a procedure, a plan. When we go back to the airlines cannot benchmark different GSPs with the same ISEGO checklist because they don't know what type of process you assessed in Pakistan and if they can compare it to another GSP in Canary Islands. With the new checklist, that will be possible because the requirements will be very, very concrete. So among the many requirements that the airlines ask us regarding what is related to today's session is about aligning what it was or what is still the GSM to the best practices. That's why we are working a lot with IGOM and the IGOM portal. We are insisting in implementing IGOM portal because that will be the base for ISEGO. The checklist will be there, will be in the IGOM portal. The GSPs now are already signing on the IGOM portal for them to assess what is their alignment with IGOM, and also for them to identify which variations they have. It's our intention to reduce and to make sure that the GSPs understand that they have variations that they should not need. You heard it from Willie Walsh, like maybe the entity has differences or that they think that are reasonable, but at the end, maybe they are not reasonable because there's a procedure that is accepted. So we want the same procedures everywhere in every airport. Benchmarking, I just mentioned it. The best practice, I already mentioned it. And then increasing the number of scopes for ISEGO. We are working on that. It's not our priority, but you will see how ISEGO is going to increase or will move forward towards other scopes. I have simplified the slides that we saw in the previous session, but there's 4 pillars. We want simplification, harmonization, automation, and acceptance. Simplification for the reasons I've mentioned. So we are aligning towards all requirements in such a way that they will be like easier to assess in a more objective way. The GSPs will have like an easier way to understand what is expected from the requirement, and there will be less room for misinterpretation or for argument. Monica has already explained a bit about ORM, etc. For automation, we are working right now with the IGOM portal enhancement for future usage for remote assessment of documentation. We are also working on the integration of ISEGO within the e-store of IATA, and the main intention of that is the application for the audit for the GSPs will be simplified in the sense that now when we have to sign an agreement, the agreement has to go back, forth, whatever. It takes time. Then it will be integrated into the system, and it will be just e-signature and so on. So it will be easier for the GSPs. In terms of harmonization and what affects to you is like the trainings will be mostly focused on what is in the manuals. That will be easier for us to standardize what is your knowledge about the manuals. That will be the basic. And when it comes to methodology, this is something that we'll need to develop, and the trainings will be mostly based on that. Maybe we'll look for trainings within IATA to be given to you for us to keep you updated. Acceptance, I already mentioned, like we are now in final agreement signature with like 5 different airports and CAAs. We are working with the airlines and so on, and then we'll work with the GSPs. There is where we continue needing your support in such a way that the reports are always reliable. That will be like a translation of all the changes that we are doing into what it will mean for you in the sense that now we are already recruiting, starting to recruit COPA members in other parts of the world because we need the buy-in from the GSPs in terms of logistics. Now it doesn't make sense. We have no other solution. Most of you are based in Europe, but when it comes to the planning of an audit, we want the GOAs to have a choice for auditors in Americas and Asia for them to be able to offer logistics that make more sense to the GSP. And also we are recruiting full scope auditors. We are not recruiting partially auditors that will not be able to perform the whole scope. For those of you that do not have all the disciplines, Jessica, if it's already working with some of you, and you can contact her if you feel ready to go for an assessment for an additional discipline that you didn't ask in the past, and for us to do the process of evaluation and so on. We will have to work in the qualification process of the auditors because it will need to be in line with the new modules of ISEGO that will be communicated in due time. And I want to remind you also that all these changes that we are doing have not been communicated to externally except to yourselves. So we are interested in knowing, in involving you since the beginning and in getting your opinion on what we are doing, because then we will have maybe time to change or time to enhance or time to improve. So I know that at this time is only highlights of the changes we're going to do, but as soon as we have more details and more concrete topics, then we will contact you. Because, as I said, we want more direct and transparent communication from IATA to COPA. I mentioned already the harmonization. We are not doing QC, we are not doing QA, or we do limited QC. We are not doing QA, and we are not doing performance monitoring. But we will do it in a simplified way, but we will restart that. Now is not the priority. Now we trust in your integrity, in your knowledge. That's why we are asking you to double QC the reports, because we don't want to be challenged if that was the case. So now it's not a priority, but it will come in due time. And we will do it not in a punitive way. We will do it just to improve the performance of the auditors. Also, we get feedback from many different sources about the GOAs, about the auditors, how they perform, from the GSPs. And Jessica explained you all this. So this is information that we are taking. We are not contacting anyone if there's not a significant issue, but what we are asking is that you are aware that you represent IATA when you are on site, and you have to be aware of the program requirements and to be acting as such with total integrity and ethical conduct. And for the rest, I already explained. So I'm going to introduce my colleagues, Caroline and Gurdeep, who are going to take you into the checklist that you already received to give you further explanations on how they are going to work. Please. Is there any question? You must have thousands of questions, but I understand that maybe now. But you can reach me anytime, or Monica or Jessica, and please feel free to ask us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Santi. And I'll invite Dave Rogers, who's part of the team, head of training, and he's our team lead training. Sunny, do you have the click? No. So welcome technical COPA members to the technical session, and we also welcome other IGHC members, delegates who've joined the session just to have an idea of how the new changes for ISEGO. So welcome. And before we go to the technical session, I also want to acknowledge the teams behind the documentation of AHM and ICOM. The last 1.5 days, we've seen them present. So IATA does not write the documentation. It's done by working groups, And we have part of the working group members already here, just to give us support and assist us to answer some of the technical questions that you may have on the documentation that we will be showing. And I'm also happy to know that some of former IGOM technical members are also part of COPA, so it makes the session a bit easy and live. So just to show the ground operation governance, we have the ground operation standard group that documents AHM and IGOM. Under AHM's, which is a recommended practice of IATA 1690A. What does 1690A means? It's published in the Passenger Services Conference manual, and that means that all airlines that are members of IATA have passed a resolution to use AHM and IGOM as the manuals for aircraft handling and airport servicing procedures. So all IATA members have voted to have AHM and IGOM used as the sole standardized manual for their operation, and that's documented under recommended practice 1690A for AHM and 1690B for IGOM, and that's why the airlines are in favor of ensuring that we audit against standards that they have voted for. That's the difference. So under the AHM has 11 chapters. Different technical groups look at different sections. So under the Ground Operations Standards Group, we look at Chapter 4 of the AHM, which is aircraft handling and loading. We look at Chapter 6, which is also safety and management, part of ORM. Then we look at Chapter 8, which is the SGHA, the contracts. You saw the contracts team here. And then we have Chapter 11, which is the ground operations training. Then under IGOM, they look at Chapter 3, which is general aircraft safety and servicing chapter. Then we look at Chapter 4, which is the turnaround chapter. Chapter 6, which is the operational oversight. We need oversight in the ramp. Then the new baby that came in was the ISEGO into this group, the GOS group. Then we have the GAD team that have presented load control topics during the 1.5 days. They look at AHM Chapter 5 and IGOM Chapter 5. You need to know these chapters because those are the load control chapters. Then they look at Chapter 7, which is messaging, which will be very important for the post-departure flight issues, okay? Then Chapter 9, we have the GSC specification. All the GSC specifications are in that chapter. Then Chapter 10 is environment. Then currently we have AHM Chapter 1 and 2, both AHM and IGOM, which are passenger and baggage chapter, currently under the travel board, but have moved to the ground operations department, okay? But they're different in terms of governance because they have to be aligned with the Passenger Services Conference Manual, which has resolutions that airlines have to vote for. So any passenger and baggage procedures that go into the AHM or IGOM must be voted in by the airlines. So day 2 is today. We'll be looking at the new ISEGO checklist concept. We'll be looking at what will it mean for training. Then I have Dave who will be taking us through a deep dive of what is documented in AHM Chapter 11. It's a training for all of us, and it's just wonderful listening to Dave. Then tomorrow, we'll have part of the GOS members taking us through the audit process of IGOM Chapter 3 and 4 specifically, because those are the chapters we have managed to develop currently. We shared with you workbooks for those sections, but they are not finalized. That's why they are workbooks. We are still going through the voting process, okay? So they might significantly, not 100%, but they might change. So what's the new change? I think it has been sung, and this is the most important thing. We'll be auditing against IATA best practice. And for a start, we start with AHM and IGOM. Then other IATA standards, e.g. DGR manual. What we are saying, we'll be using IATA best practice standards that have been accepted by the industry. So auditable standards developed, they'll be developed and picked directly from the AHM and IGOM to drive the ISEGO program implementation. That's the biggest change. Therefore, IATA is in the process of phasing out the GOSM, the ISEGO standard manual, and it will be done gradually. So why the change? How many can agree to that change? These are some of the reasons that we've been given, that there's a lot of duplication of GOSAPs, especially in the HDL AGM. Is it true? Okay, I'll give an example, one, for GSC. 1.2 is a GSC operation, right? HDL 1.2. Then 1.3, again, we have stairs and passenger boarding bridge. I think 1.4, again, we have boarding bridge. Then at one point, we call it catering procedures, and it's actually an elevating equipment, right? Then when we go to the loading section, again, we say loading equipment, which is basically a ULD, right? So when you look at that, you will find there are some Roman numbers which are repeated. For example, ensure that the handrail is raised. So you'll find it's repeated so many times. So for an auditee who does ISEGO standard after 3 or 4 times, it sort of becomes redundancy. So that's one thing we want to reduce. Thank you. Then the other issue we face from IATA at times is misinterpretation of applicability of GOSAPs, either by the auditee or the auditor. True? And one of the standards that is 50-50 when we look at, because Santi and the team, sorry, we have 2 people in our team, Santi and Sunny. At times I confuse the names, but it's okay. Santi, when they present us with results, and one of the standards is 1.4, the PBB, you'll find the auditing technique is 50-50. And you know what auditees say? Depending on which auditor will come, it's how they feel. So we want to remove misinterpretation of applicability of GOSAPs for both. Then another one, auditing of guidance material. IATA created a double standard. You will find in the guidance material that is where the standard is. True? Yeah? There is no other way. For example, GSC must be positioned when a door is opened. I think it's in the guidance material. That's the standard. And the GSC cannot document it in any, the GSP cannot document it in any other way. Then again, because of the restructuring that we've gone through IATA, we decided to stick to our core, and therefore the audit program has been rescoped to fit into our strategic objective, which is implementation of AHM Chapter 11 and implementation of IGOM by the industry. IATA's aim is to ensure we have minimum standards applied in the industry, not the whole standard, at least minimum. If we set minimum standards, at least there is a base of standardization. That's what we want to create. And then close identified gaps. We realized when we did the gap analysis, at times not the whole process is audited. And again, when I look at the GSC, you find the tractor is not audited. For example, the belt loader, unless it's a loading equipment, is not. So there are some GSC you'll find we miss the plan if we don't have a complete layout. And then why the change? Develop ISEGO implementation checklists that are entirely based on AHM and IGOM as best practice. So a lot of work has gone through in the last, 5 months? We've looked at the gap analysis between AHM, IGOM, and GSM. As we face out the GSM, we want to ensure no standard is left out, and key learning points, what did we miss, so that we do not repeat. So we went through a journey whereby we also noticed some issues within the IGOM. I'm not saying IGOM is perfect. We found some duplications. We found some missing procedures. So in the workbook we sent you, whatever that is shaded light green are actually new procedures. Then we created alignment of content just to ensure that we have a proper flow of process. And from the content we developed, picked sections that are implementation checklist standards, or rather the standards that we want you to observe when you go on site. That leads to the development of the new ISEGO checklist, and this is based on the industry stakeholders' feedback. From the airline, from the GSP, from the COPA members, we've asked you give us your issues, and we've received them. So we are listening. So what's the aim? Again, drive harmonization and standardization. Make it simple. Let's enjoy the audit. Let's audit the same. Let's build a brand. Build on the existing brand. We are not saying, ISEGO, we are celebrating 15 years soon. Some of you have audited for 15 years. And when we did the survey for airlines, they still say that it's the benchmark. The GSM is still the benchmark. When they do not have any other checklist to audit their process, they use it, okay? And IGOM also now is a new brand. So the synergies, the industry already knows about the GSM and the IGOM. Again, main aim, reduce duplication, redundancies. We might not do it at one shot, but we will strive to, reduce the redundancy. Audit validation, again, based on best practice. Process-based. We want, when auditors are on ground, you're looking at a turnaround from actions prior arrival up to actions post-departure. So it's a process. You can take it from the middle, depending on how the operations is. So you're looking at the entire process. No process is missed. So new ISEGO checklist. What are we phasing out? We are starting with the operational checklist, PAB, LOD, AGM, HDL. Then we want to phase out the guidance material. Customer airlines procedures, we will not be auditing customer airlines procedures. We know they have more procedures, okay? So specific AHM IGOM. Then auditing against defined standards, those are the GOSAPs. We will not be looking at the GOSAPs. Then also the auditor's actions we will remove. What is coming in? IATA best practice. It's been said. Work in progress, new ORM. We are going to change the ORM, and CGM, still work in progress. Another thing that we are still working on IATA is how we are going to assess the compliance to regulatory training, e.g. security training, DGR training, because they're out of scope of AHM Chapter 11. Then work in progress, we have specific procedures whereby you will still need to reference the customer airline manual. One example is when you're doing loading and there's the issue of aircraft stability. So the question would be, is this the aircraft that you have on ground, is it affected by ground stability? So if the answer is yes, whereby you need to offload forward fast or aft fast, it must be documented in the manual so that you find out the correct chronological process of offloading or loading. Either do you start from aft or do you start from forward? Some aircraft do not have that issues, okay? So we are working on that process. Also local variation. When we audit IGOM, is it 3.5, which is weather, we might have local variation. When I was in Nairobi, I thought we had severe weather. When I moved to Canada, it was something else. And it's crazy. So today, the base of today, we want to look at the training audit concept. training is the basis of our people. We have to tool them to understand the process we want them to implement. So no other way than starting with training. So what's the drive behind auditing against AHM Chapter 11? Standardization is the key, standards training for operation. You can imagine if different companies, the first question is your passenger handling staff trained as per AHM 11? Yes, I can hire. You know, that's the future, but that's where we want to get to. Enhance cross-utilization of personnel. Then under AHM 11, we have wide selection of modules, wide selection of training, compared to what we currently have. And my colleague Gudip will take you through the wide selection of training modules we have. Then we want to reduce training time and costs. For anyone who has worked in a GSP or airline, you know the man hours that is spent on training. So the audit concept, that's not my area. I will not stick much on it. There are 4 critical steps. The GSP has to do preparation. They have to do a gap analysis on the portal that's going to be developed. They will have done their documentation. And we understand right now most GSPs have their documentation in place. Then there'll be allocation of audit, current process. Then document validation, which will be done remotely, and it will be sampling. Then the implementation verification on site, either to see the records, and some of the records might also be collected remotely. So GSP will prepare and perform a gap analysis. There are 3 main topics in AHM Chapter 11. We have the training management section, good foundation of having training documentation. Dave will take us through. Then we have the job functions that the working group has defined. So what the GSP needs to do, especially on the job function and the course and topics, the training audit will be tailor-made to fit GSP needs. So if you have a baggage loader, you will go to AHM Chapter 11 and see the courses that have been outlined as minimum standard for baggage handling staff, and that's what you will pick, okay? If I do cabin cleaning, you will pick what suits you. If I have a fast entrant passenger handling and you want them to just do meet and greet, they will do the training for meet and greet. So tailor-made to fit the purpose. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Gudip, to take you through the modules that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Hello. Thank you. As Monica has already updated you, that next year at some stage, the GSM will disappear. And operational discipline, as you know, PAB, HDL, AGM, will be audited against the IGOM procedures. So we have seen your feedback when we sent you the workbook, what is going to happen to the training modules, the training sections, what is there in those operational disciplines. They're not going anywhere. You will be auditing those, as Caroline has updated you, against the AHM. So they are there, and they will not be the same what we used to see under AGM, like aircraft ground movement at a very high level. And then under HDL, aircraft handling and loading, those are also at a very high level. So what we're going to see in the AHM, we have a huge number of modules. Like in the passenger services, we have around 10 modules. And then, in the general section, we have 10 modules. And in the passenger, we have 13. And in the ramp, we have around 18 modules. And the load control, 3 modules. So these are different options are available for the GSP based on the job functions, what their staff do. In general, they have like basic aviation safety or ramp safety. The rest of the things are very job specific. Ramp, arrival, departure, pushback, towing. Similarly, under the baggage also is there, passenger check-in, boarding, PRM, all those functions are there. Under load control and messaging. So every GSP, based on their staff functions, they can pick and choose. This is how they're going to define in their manual. So when you as an auditor go, you will follow the AHM, which you can see when you go through. Dave will explain you. We will run you guys through AHM table 11.1. You will see there is a training requirements defined there. If you are doing a baggage handling, for example, if I'm a baggage handling staff, under 11.1, you will see that I have to do general 1, 4, 5, and then comes to job specific, for example, RAM 16. So that 16 is baggage handling training. So those are the kind of detail you will see when Dave will present you. We will go through the detail in the AHM section by section. And please do ask questions. This is your training, and it's an interactive session. And ask wherever you have any questions, because going forward, as we said, you're going to do an audit against the AHM under these provisions. Fine. I'll hand over to Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending and allowing me to come on stage and talk to you. A little bit of background from me. A long time ago, I was an auditor as well. And one of the things that used to frustrate me most was being able to understand the standard I was expected to audit against, the clarity of the document. One of our actions is to try and define something that's really easy to make a judgment against and not expose yourself to having to go, well, is it, isn't it? That's a dangerous place for an audit to be. And the second thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank you all. Don't know how often you hear that as auditors, but I'd personally like to thank you, because every time you identify something that could be improved, you help move the needle to a better place. So, thank you. Please continue these pieces of work. So, 11.10, why is it important? Well, it's actually the foundation of everything we do in our industry. It's how people get qualified and competent, that's the word I'm going to use, competent to perform a task. This says they have to receive some form of training. Now, whilst I'm using the word standards, I also need to say there has to be some variation in it, because depending on the size of the airport and the size of the organisation, in some big hub operations, specialisation is the key to efficiency. Somebody may just work boarding gates. In smaller operations, generalisation may be the key to efficiency, and that's determined by the ground service provider to give the best quality. There's one immutable fact: the person performing the task shall be trained. Now we have a standard that defines what that training shall consist of. But we went a little bit further than that for you to say, well, actually, it's great to have all of this, but there should be some management around it. If you haven't read 11.10 yet, and has anybody read it? Great. Is it okay? Is it an improvement? Thank you, whoever said sure. That's good. Highly appreciated. We'd always like to get your feedback as well if there's not enough clarity in there to help you make a decision and a judgment. Because remember, this is your working standard that you're measuring against. If somebody says, where does it say that? Here's where you can point at it. So I'd heavily encourage you to read this one, and this is AHM. So it's the standard, not the manual, not the IGOM. So people should be reading this and referencing to it and declaring their conformity with it in the portal. Scroll down a bit, Gadeep. So we've put training terminology in there. That's useful. So now we're all speaking exactly the same language, and hopefully it removes an opportunity for misinterpretation and conflict in any discussions. And we define initial training, update training, maintenance of continuous competence. Keep going down. Something new, recurrent training and recurrent assessment. Previously, the requirement was you shall receive recurrent training 36 months. or shorter. We've moved on, we've evolved as an industry, a sector, and we've turned around and said, hey, somebody who's performing this task and has been doing it for 21 years without error, without fail, without injury, without accident, why do I need to take them away from production and sit them in a classroom and teach them what they already know? It insults their knowledge, it burns up time, and it takes them away from production where our airline customers need people at the shop floor. So, in there it talks about here's what's going to happen, how I'm going to ensure that you're still current. I'm going to recurrently assess you. And this starts with a knowledge check. And hopefully as you read through, you're going to say this is what happens. And there's enough evidence in there that says you should be able to demonstrate that you are doing one or other of these. So a knowledge check. You as an existing employee performing the task, you should be able to pass the same knowledge test as the person I've just trained a new hire. If you can't, we've got a problem. And we'll talk about how problems are addressed in a moment. Now, so you've done that, but my next thing is, that's good, but I really care that you can perform the task without error in the operation. So have I got an operational checklist to validate that you are able to show me what you should be doing and explain why you're doing it, a show and tell. So as you go amongst us, you say, show me your process for this. Have you got this? It should meet this standard. Minimum standard. If you have one with bells and whistles, fantastic, but you'd expect to see this. Then it comes back to, so what's your process if it doesn't work, dear ground handler? They can't pass the test. They didn't quite perform it. You're going to see the opportunity there for corrective action. Corrective action does not mean retrain the person. It may only be that one little piece of information that they've missed. Why would I want to spend 8 hours telling you everything for just 10 minutes of direct conversation? So it's a little bit slicker, it's a little bit smarter. It now impacts and it affects people the way they want to be treated. For those of you that attended stuff earlier, they talk about Generation Z and X and all of this stuff that I don't understand. However, I do know that if you treat people with respect, they can buy into this. Insulting them by saying, ha, come and attend that training again, it's only 8 hours. And they go, that's not the best way to deal with me. So it brings us into that way. Now, we also have definitions of a trainer. That's nice. So as you go out there, you should be able to say, who delivered this training? Are they qualified? That gives it a bit there. And we'll go later into the syllabus that says what qualification actually looks like. We talk about on-the-job trainer. Now, you're going to hear people call it an on-the-job trainer, an on-the-job coach, but the definition there starts to give you, it doesn't matter what the job title is, what's the role they're doing? What's the function they're doing? So if somebody says, oh, it's an on-the-job coach, you say, okay, that's the definition. Somebody that's an assessor. Have you got that? Is it the same person doing this as this as this? Start to give some definitions. Keep going, Gadeep. Are you okay, by the way? Any questions? If you've got a question, you can shout out any time you like. I take silence as positive affirmation, so thank you. So now, flowcharts. I like flowcharts. I hope you do too, because we put one in. And this is a normal process. And we've got a red dotted line. I'll explain this as we go. The bit above the red dotted line is nothing to do with anybody else apart from me as the employer. That's my business. I hire somebody, I welcome them to my company, I give them the big Swiss kiss, hold on to them tight, shake the hands, and then I'll put them into a system of record. My HR system, or. Now we go, scroll a little bit please, Gadeep. Now we go between the red lines. These are the bits that Caroline inferred about. These are bits that don't sort of quite sit with IATA, AHM, because it's regulatory stuff. It's security training, it's safety training that may be OSHA or required by legislation or government within a country, and it's dodgy goods, because that's ICAO, technical instructions. But do you know what? That has to happen. And it should be entered in a system of record, be it in Excel or an all-singing, dancing LMS. It should be tracked, monitored, predicted, and controlled. That's what we're talking about. It's control of your process. I should be able to demonstrate that to you. Doesn't matter if it's on a whiteboard or a big LMS, I should be able to demonstrate it's controlled. And recurrent training provided as required. Now, I'm using the word recurrent training in there because certainly for dangerous goods, aviation security, recurrent assessment is not in the ballpark yet. It's recurrent training. Unless somebody convinces you that their regulator allows something different. But they will be able to show you that and explain the why. So now we get down into the... Can you make it go a little bit? Yeah. So now we get below, and this is in our world and your scope. The person has joined us. They've joined in a job role. Passenger agent, ramp agent, cargo agent, baggage. And there will be task-related training. So they've done the generic stuff between the reds, security, safety, dangerous goods. Now we get into the task. There shall be some form of initial training. And it's okay when I say some form, because a little bit later on we start to specify what that shall be. Again, that gets put in a system of record, predicted for recurrence, and it shall be achieved. Recurrence shall either be achieved either by recurrent training, if the organisation goes, we put people in a classroom, or recurrent assessment, if they say, we have a process for this, and this is what we do and deliver. Beyond that, we have some non-operational stuff. Emergency response, supervision training, investigation, SMS functions. Again, whatever training I do for my employees, and any organisation should do this, it's not just me, that should go in a system of record so I can show what's happened, and it should be controlled and managed and captured. Okay. Is that okay so far? Good. Still moving on then. I like thumbs up, I'm good for that. Okay. Now, rectification training. This is when it didn't work. Something's gone wrong. And it could be an incident, an accident, a failure of compliance during an audit, internal, external, blah, blah. Something went wrong. So previously, retrain them. Well, the training may not have worked in the first place. Why repeat something that may not have worked? Actually, now we're saying your organisation should determine what was the failure and why it failed. A bit of root cause analysis. So was it a gap in the knowledge that they didn't know a fact? Was it a bit of skills or confidence fade? People have been away from the industry for months, years. It's been a long time since I had my feet back on the tarmac, and I'm delighted to say I was recently. Knowledge fade. So it may have been that somebody had sort of forgotten that, a lapse. It may be that there's a bit of an attitude gap. But the organisation should determine what was the cause, and they should provide appropriate responses to it. And look, there's another one right over that right-hand side that says it failed because it's an organisational or systemic. In other words, a job that takes 5 people was actually allocated 2 people, and we're surprised this person had an accident. Not going to retrain that person. I'm probably going to speak wider to the organisation to say, come on, if it's 2 people, you need to give them more time. Wouldn't that be great if an organisation followed that? And you can help steer them to say, have a read of this. It will help you as an organisation. Anyway, So if it's organisational or systemic, it needs to be resolved outside of the training world. It's organisational. Fix it. If it's training, well, a suitable intervention. And these are a bit woolly words because it allows the organisation to say, hey, what's going to help you better have more confidence in positioning the passenger boarding bridge? You may say, I'd love to shadow somebody for a day. We'll make that happen. You may say, can somebody watch me for a day? Somebody may say, can I have 2 or 3 goes without an aircraft to practice? Yes, whatever's going to bring that person back to confidence and competence, that's the right thing to do. It's not a silver bullet hits everything. It's the right surgical approach to help that person in the right way return to production. And whatever happens should be recorded in a system of record. So we can see a history of what happened and how they would return to production. How does that work? Okay? You'd be expecting, I could show you that in my organisation and say, this is how we do it. And you go, standard met. Now, you're going to ask for, show me your training policy manual documentation that describes this. Every good organisation should be able to show you something that fits this. Any organisation that doesn't, well, guess what? This is really going to help them improve and go, oh, we hadn't thought about this. So this is the how it shall be. Funny, we actually say we should plan training, and you would expect to say, have you got a plan? How does it work? How do these things happen? Reviewed on a regular basis. That doesn't mean daily, weekly. It means realistically irregular. So if regulation is changed annually, you'd say, is it reviewed in line with that? And here's a really good one. Here's a really good one. IATA update their production publications every year. So wouldn't it be good if the company you were talking at says, we review things annually, if not more frequently, and we do that because it's triggered by publications of standards. That's a good answer. I'd like that. If they say we review it every 3 years, you go, what happens to the interim? Yes, sir.
I see a bunch of shalls and shoulds in here.
Yes.
Do they mean the same as I say?
It's a good question, isn't it? Shall means you must. Should means it's a good, strong recommendation to achieve the outcome. I hope so. Let me consult the technical author. Is that how we wrote it?
At this stage, we are keeping in the IGOM also the shall item is auditable and the should is a recommendation. But we are still discussing with the group and the ground operation task force. By the time we will publish the final version, we're going to give a definition also if there is some kind of a clarity is required. At this stage, all the shall items, all the auditable items we have defined as a shall. But there are certain places where we still need to rework on change. So we are still working with the ground operation task force. And if the items is auditable, we're going to move it to a shall item.
It's actually brilliant. And we'll look at this in the training plan. Let's have a look at 5.2. The training plan should be made in conjunction with the operational plan. That's a should recommendation. However, each company shall develop a training plan reviewed on. So if I do it in conjunction with my operational, bonus mark. As long as I've got a plan, standard met. If I have no plan and it's not reviewed or in conjunction with, well, that's an area of improvement. I know you say it's a finding, I go it's an area of improvement. It's just a difference of wording. Okay, so far. Does it make logical flow for you? Good. I like it when we're able to deliver something to you that's useful. So, keep going on. Training material, really useful. A general training program should define Isn't it sensible if the training syllabus of a company tells you who the target is to take the training? That always helps, rather than just spray and pray. Ideally, there should be some indication of how long this training takes. Why is that important? Why would a company want to specify this takes an hour or this takes 8 hours? Where's the benefit? Isn't it a good indicator then that the company can actually plan this? So these are all sneaky things that if people follow the standard, it will help them. And by you confirming that they're meeting the standard or otherwise, you're helping them improve their game. Big, small, wide, large, everybody. It's really good if it states the outcomes. So at the end of this training, you will have done some training. At the end of this training, you will be qualified to operate a conveyor belt. Now I know what the outcome is. I can measure that then so it's bringing a little bit more academia into what was there before. Should talk about the methods, how it's assessed. Is there a test? Is there an on-job assessment? Should all be documented, and you should be able to see this. Why is this important? Because you remember our good colleagues here said, well, there's a head office documentation check, but then there's this validation at the airport. You're seeing the things, the espoused theory, which should then be witnessed in the station. So you're hearing what should happen, and you can measure that against what is happening. The shall be against the as is. Okay. Let's keep going on.
You have a question?
Who? Yes.
Shouldn't it be a shell also in that list?
I think have we got prerequisites in there? Duration assessments. Can you scroll up to 531 a little bit more, Gadeep? Thank you very much for that. It's probably something that at next revision we can add into there any required prerequisites. Because there are some. In the matrix, it does throw it out a little bit, but I agree with you, it should probably be also in there as well to say if there are prerequisites. Right. I agree. And thank you very much for that, because that's something that we can help improve together. If it helps you, it helps us. Yeah. Okay, let's go on 533. Evaluation, yes. Review, right, review of the training program. At least once a year or as necessary. So the minimum standard is once a year. But I might want to do it more frequently. And if I do, I should be able to explain why. Why have you changed it mid-season? But once a year is the right thing, and why? Because publications come out annually, so therefore review your program. We talk about training records. Physical on paper or electronically in a system. It shall have identification, legibility, maintenance, retrieval, the ISO things that you'd expect to see in there for quality control of documentations. We expect to see the name of the person, the trainee, and the ID number. Now, here's the thing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the previous page, can you scroll? When you were talking about the records, yeah, you actually mentioned that the operator. Is that oversight, or is this dedicated only to operators? I mean, aircraft operators, because this seems like a copy-paste from IOSA.
Yeah, I see that. The operator shall have a system.
Yeah. And in the next page also it talks about operators in plural. Next page, operators in GHSP. So here they are singling them out.
Yeah.
So
Eva knows the background to this.
I will explain it. Eva Pluháčková from IATA. Chapter 11 was not originally written as a procedure material, right? IGOM. It's not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It was written as a guidance. So by working on a checklist, we recognize that we will have to restructure the chapter 11 to more A, B, C, D, E, F, G points. So not everything what you see the should shall. We will define what is shall, and in a checklist we will have only shall items. Whatever we don't want to, what is a good practice, it will be probably same way as we have it in IGOM notes. You know, it doesn't mean that you should not allow your documentation with it, but it might not be a subject of the audit. We still have to work out a system that we are consistent. If we are using operator, chapter 11 will be an organization. It can be airline implementing it, and they don't have to undergo ISEGO. It can be GSP implementing it, and they might or might not undergo ISEGO. So we will also review that we talk an organization or company, whatever, so that you don't have to puzzle and take word by word. But we also promised you, Caroline was presenting, that it will be yes, no, that it's not gonna be, you have to read through it, it will be clear what are the auditable items. So, and it will be also clarified on our side what the airline company will be requested to do, and what they are benchmarking doing the gap analysis against. So as we don't have the checklist yet, and you will see later on, we just updated, or we are updating the syllabus, which you're gonna see in a while, we were not able to present it, so we decided to actually give you a familiarization with the chapter 11 as such and its content, but it will be changed. You know, it will be more simplified, so don't worry. I know that I saw some of your faces, well, I'm gonna audit that. It will be clarified, it will be simple.
Thank you, Eva.
By the way, just one more question still a little bit on this. We sort of, let's say, pulling IGOM from the GSPs, but on the other hand, there's also the airlines who are pushing IOSA. In terms of them, they are auditing the IOSA standards in GRH. Is there any more alignment foreseen between AHM, IGOM, IOSA, and IGOM, and well, ISEGO?
What a good question.
Yeah, when we looked into the training requirement in the AHM and also the IGOM, we had looked into the ISEGO alignment with the AHM and also the IOSA. You correctly said the GRH, all those sections which are still not as much as in the ISEGO, it's only the GRH. Few of the standards are there in the IOSA, but we did the gap analysis and we aligned that. So you will see in the IGOM much more than what you see in the GRH standard now in IOSA, right? So when you actually see the workbook, if you have seen that, GRH is only the few standards and they are at very high level as compared to what even previously we had in ISEGO, but now in IGOM it is more, you know, it goes further deep into that.
So
it covers.
Okay,
it covers.
So you guys are working together with the
Absolutely.
GRH team?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
Mm.
But we probably change it if your regulator allows you differently with your regulator. And that's the difference which we will have to sort out internally. But we will be upfront. There's only 2 points which we are aware we are different. And we know we will have to sort it out because it will not be acceptable for us. So we are aware of that. So thank you for the
Sorry, this is the table of questions. As Eva was saying about the recurrent assessment and recurrent training, I was just, before you go on, just to ask you why you put the same deadline, so 36 months for both of them, because what I think is at the very end, there will be only a recurrent assessment every 36 months, and we'll replace completely the recurrent training. So, or you lower the deadline, you put it shorter, or?
Can I take this one?
Please, Dave.
Okay, so we had to break down the first barrier that we've always done, recurrent training. We had to introduce the new concept of recurrent assessment. This is the first iteration of that. So to stop it being an absolute fearful monster for industry, we said, let's keep something similar, 36. There is nothing to say that in my organisation I may choose to do it more frequently, because it encourages me to maintain the competence of my employees by operational monitoring and checking them against the standard, or any time I do this. So it may be that this becomes ongoing competency even. So this was just a starting point to introduce it to industry, airlines, regulators, ground handlers, to say, here's an opportunity. And we believe it will be a big enhancement for safety, because now I'm checking that somebody is operating a forklift correctly at 4 o'clock in the morning in the rain, not just can sit in a classroom and pass the exam. It's more powerful.
If you do it, the concept is still on in the industry, the continuous assessment of people during on-the-job training mainly. But if you leave the organization to have this deadline of 36 months, it would take years for them to reduce it. If they do it, we want them to do it independently. So probably we need to give them a shorter deadline, so they can check people every 1.5 years or every 2 years. Just
one thing we were also mindful not to do was to add a cost to industry that wasn't there before. So it's like, okay, we offer industry option A, retrain people 36 months, classroom, there's a cost. Operational assessment, there's still a cost, but it's less of a cost, and it's also a more effective outcome. So as we move into that space, people can start to say, actually, I can do this more frequently. And there will be people coming this year that would normally go through classroom-based recurrent, but they're going to go through operational assessment. They'll be our first run through. And this will start to give us some data. It will take a couple of years for industry to become comfortable, and all of us to understand and adopt and move towards, should we choose to. And then we can start looking at the time periods. I'm not sure where 36 months ever came from. Does anybody?
Yeah. No, initially, most of the regulatory authorities.
Sorry, it came from
JA.
JA.
That's correct.
Yeah,
so initially, most of the regulatory trainings were like 24 months. So this was the initial, I know in the beginning when I was in the ground handling, so we were like doing every training 24 months. GSC operator is trained, now he knows how to drive the pushback. Again, we are training him again how to drive a pushback. So it was no sense to train him again after 24 months on the same things, you know. So after that, I know industry innovated a lot, and the operation increased, especially the ground handling business came in, and most of the airlines have handed over their ground operations to the ground handling. Ground handling increased a lot. Some of the GSPs have more than 8,000 staff, 15,000 staff throughout the world. It's not, as Dave said, we need to be mindful. It's not possible also for any organization to keep on training such a high number of staff on the repeated training for every 12 months or 1.5 years. And some of I'm sure you guys are aware of that aviation security. Previously, it was for 12 months, some of the regulatory authority. Some of them now it's revised to 2 years. Now it's revised to 5 years. So this is how, industry is growing. They understand the concept. Is it important? What is critical? If it's a retraining or reassessment is required, what is need to be required? Is it a short? What section, as Dave explained, what section is required to be retrained? If I'm driving a car, I don't need a training again how to drive a car after 2 years. I know that. If I did a mistake, the organization need to do the root cause analysis and try to understand the process failure, organization failure, fatigue, and what are the common factors that. So accordingly, you can, based on that, we are coming in the future also with the revised training, the recurrent part also. Please, go ahead.
So evidence-based training, also the equivalent, advanced qualification training programs and all the like for pilots. That is based on the shortcomings of performance, identified through inspections, audits, all this sort of stuff.
Fully agree. We're starting on the journey from 36 months, cast in stone, 36 months.
Continuous development.
Gentle nudge. But yes, there was also one over there.
This is Saman Biswas from AI Airport Service Limited. So I'm from the ground handling company. We have seen a lot of, when you train personnel in an organization, it's been a minimum duration of 36 months, that organization personnel can retain the knowledge that they acquire the first time. So, thank you.
I'll share a secret with you. I've got a PhD research student, and they're doing a research project on ground handling staff, retention of information based on how recurrent, the method of recurrent training is delivered to them. So we're going to take a bunch of 500 employees around the world, and we're going to say, you are going to get no training, apart from initial, until 36 months, then you're all going back into class. And I'm going to test you before you go back into class to see what you recall. You are going to receive monthly briefings. And at 36 months, I'm going to, so we're taking different control groups and trialing different things so that we can once and for all, because it's a question I ask everybody, can anybody tell me where 36 months came from and why? Or was it just a number? We'll go with 36. So we hope to have, and it's a 7-year, it's a PhD, so it's a full doctorate that the person's doing. We're hoping to be able to share the results with you and say, hey, this is where we think we can move the needle. And to the point about pilots, the people that work in ground handling are a different type of people. They're a complete mix, and different motivators sitting there. So we're researching on the basis of that. And I'm really sorry to go off in a different direction.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so absence from work, it does what it says on the tin. And I've had some interesting questions with people who said, well, they've been away for just 13 months. And I said, well, that's the thing then. Do that. And it really helps me to have a standard I can point to and say, I'm really sorry, that's what you have to do. So again, clear and hopefully simple enough language that everybody that reads it can interpret it, follow it, and more importantly, be able to evidence and demonstrate it to yourselves during any audit. That's what I want to see. Let's keep going. Training method. Yes.
Requirements. I'm presuming here that they would all be converted into the intellects and your checklist would be adapted, but conforming to this, right?
That's correct.
That's
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so now we were also told in the beginning of the session that the focus is going to be on implementation and not so much on documentation. So when all this is going to be converted into the intellects checklist, like for instance, the table of 3 to 6 months, 6 months to, so are you expecting us to audit that he has actually a documented requirement that this is for 3 to 6 months and this is for beyond 6 months, and or is it only the implementation? Because this is going to be a question, because you know, it is like, as a GSB, have they really adopted the EHL?
You want to take?
Yeah.
If you were to ask me, if you were auditing me, I would say, oh look, my training document requires this, it matches, copy paste. So standard met at documentation level. When you validate a station, you would say, has anybody returned to work who has been away for any period more than? Yes. May I see the return to work process? Does it mirror that?
So then that is exactly what we do today.
Yeah, yeah.
No. There will be a change. Sorry, there will be a change. All the requirements in Chapter 11 will be in the portal. Currently, we launch IGOM portal, so we have the requirements in a portal, right? And in different layout, clarify what is must, will be in IGOM portal. That will be organization responsibility, and Caroline was showing it at the beginning, to do their gap analysis compared to Chapter 11 and provide document references. That's in IGOM portal. There will be a sampling that documentation is aligned. In the checklist, in NTLX or whatever system is used, will be a verification. So there will be focus on rostering, on records, on whatever we can verify on site. Sometimes you can probably remotely verify the syllabus, the training material, updates of training material. So we will focus on different items, what you audit now, but that's what the checklist is going to consist. We don't expect you to go on site and verify documented procedures or processes on site. It will be taken out, and on site we will only verify, and it could be done remotely if a handler manages records automatically and you can have access. It can be remotely. There will be different possibilities, but in a checklist we will focus on implementation. And because we don't have a checklist yet, that's why it's not clear in training, but you will absolutely see it tomorrow with the IGOM, and you will see which items are there. So you also will not audit all Chapter 3 and 4. There are some stuff which you will be observe and verifying, but the documentation will not be audited during the station audit or on-site audit or whatever you go. That's going to be in portal. That's a declaration of the handler that he complies, the company complies, and there will be a sampling methods that it's true. That's about it. So you're not going to have this one in Intellex as you see it. Even if you put A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there will be under each item maybe records, you know, or whatever, 36 months recurrency. You will have to check that it's true, right, via records. And that would be, yes. Right.
Sorry. You have introduced the new concept, okay? Continuous competencies training, okay? And then you can guarantee that they respect this kind of training program through the assessment process, if I understood correctly. Mm-hmm. So basically, what do you expect from us to check in this case? Okay. Because assessment can be done through checklist, can be done through
checklist,
and
yeah.
So
we have a description for the check. Yeah. Look, you're not gonna see the assessment right away, right? We introduced the concept last year, but if company decides to go for recurrent assessment instead of recurrent training, there is exactly described what it has to have. So there will be some documentation. They have to have a records that the assessment took place and which items were verified during the assessment.
So the items inside the checklist
the record
should be the same of the training modules, right?
Don't have to be, but the guidance is, or whatever, the requirements is clear. So you will have to see a recurrent assessment of Gurdeep, who is working on RAMP, and I want to see that it was done in a certain period, and there is a record of the assessment checklist, and his and results of the recurrent assessment is recorded, And if there was some non-conformity, how it was fixed, what they was showing in that process, if he was retrained, if he was coached, if he retake the test, whatever it is. So that's what we would like to see on site, the record of the assessment, if we have it.
Thank you very much.
The key for me is 7.2 and 7.3, which says theoretical training, the last sentence, theoretical training shall be documented. So there's something. Practical training shall be documented. That's their shalls. And there's a reason behind that is too many times.
What I would like to say is nowadays we know that the training is in compliance because they demonstrate that they have done the practical training and the theoretical training every 3 years or every 2 years or whatever it is. Now we are going to assess the process of the assessment process, okay? Which is slightly different, okay? We doesn't have the same rule, actually.
Dave, let me handle. Going forward, the concept is still same. So what we are trying to explain here is the training management part. When you are talking to the GSP, when they show it from these requirements, you are assessing whether the GSP have the training management system throughout the network or that particular station. So these are the high-level standards. Fine. So, but when you go down, as Eva was saying, that our checklist is still under process, and we're gonna convert into Intellex, a proper checklist, what you used to see similar kind in the ISAGO, you will have a table. And the GSP in advance, they will do the gap analysis and they will upload in the portal. And you as an auditor, you can do the sampling and they will put some proof also. But when you go on site, you can see the records because they're gonna send you some samples, but you can actually look into their rosters. You can pick up, I want to see this staff record. So then they will show it to you. That's the implementation when you go on site. But some of the GSP can show you also through web links, or it depends. So we are open for both the options.
Sorry. Excuse me, sorry. This
Can
is
you
again.
hear me? Okay, sorry. I'm going to belabor the point, if you'll just excuse me. It's not very clear to me how. Okay, I do understand at the station level, I don't have to review documentation. So if I'm going to audit that they have implemented these requirements, I have to first establish that it's documented as a standard or as a requirement that they will have it at the stations. Yeah. At what point or where do I find evidence that they have documented it? So you've talked about gap analysis. Am I going to do a random check in this one source, or am I going to review documentation at one point?
That's correct. One source, what Caroline had displayed, the sheet where you have a step-by-step process when the GSP is applying, and they will get ready, and then they will buy the audit in the one source, then you will do the documentation audit followed by the on-site implementation audit. So you will have that. Santi, come here.
Come.
So just to clarify this, because it's the introduction and the importance of Chapter 11, how it's going to impact the industry, this way of seeing training, recurrent training, and implementing the assessment. As Caroline was explaining, there's 4 modules that will disappear because we are already working on the checklist. Training that will part of ORM, and the way it will be assessed, the checklist itself has not been created. When you were asking about shalls, shoots most probably will disappear, because what we are trying to do is to figure out what in this chapter is auditable, and what Eva was saying, the chapter as you see it now maybe will not be the same, because now it's paragraphs, but when we process it and order it in such a way that it will be auditable and it will be the base for the IGON portal and the gap analysis, then you will see it in a different way. When we get into the methodology on how we are going to audit this, we were explaining about the remote auditing and so on, even remote auditing of records whenever it would be feasible or possible. You have experience with remote auditing, and it's not always possible. So just not to get too much headed into How is this going to be audited? Because we haven't got there yet. We have the idea, the general concept, but if you ask for details on how training or ORM is going to be audited, we haven't got there. That's why Gurdeep and Caroline are going to explain you the checklist that you already have, the workbooks that you already have, because on those ones, we are clear. For the ORM and cargo, we still have to work them. I hope this clarifies a bit.
Just maybe is similar to the previous question. As in the beginning you said that the GSP is going somehow to tailorize the modules and the training that they are going to fit with their organization. So at some point, as she was saying, we must be informed before verifying and assessing the implementation, how they tailorized. That's the main point, I think. I'm sure that in the next training session and in developing of this, we will be informed of that.
I have to take this one, sorry. You don't have to be informed, because when you go on site and you're gonna do implementation check, you already know that they are in compliance with everything what is written in Chapter 11. So you don't have to get familiar, because you know that what is written in Chapter 11, the GSP has already documented. Because they will go to portal, and in a portal there are elements. Assessment process number 8, competency requirements number 9, general 9.1, whatever. So in the portal you have element by element, and the ground service providers will do a gap analysis versus their internal documentation. So they have documented assessment process, I don't know, general prerequisites, whatever, you know, so the flow will follow the flow of Chapter 11. And they will put there their references, and they will declare that they are in compliance with everything what is written in Chapter 11. One auditor will be assigned, go to the portal and do a random sampling that it's matching, yeah? That will be one assessment. And that's just a random sampling just to double check that really the submitted self-assessment on documentation, it's done. So when you go on site, you don't have to get familiar with anything else because you are auditing this, nothing else than this. Huh? So you ask, okay, can I see your initial training? Can I see your records? Can I see the trainer? Can I see how you do a recurrent? Did you do a classroom recurrent or did you do a competency assessment? What was the scope of the competency assessment? How did you do it? What data did you use? Can I see the records? What is it for passenger handling? Does it mean the syllabi? So those will be all these questions you will be asking. I'm sorry, I'm destroying it.
No, this is fine. Leave it there, we'll pick up.
Is it more clear? Yes? Perfect. More question?
I think we are running out of
time. So
also.
the major mindset concept is you don't have to get familiar with ground service providers' procedures and processes because you are auditing IGOM, you are auditing Chapter 11, you are auditing SMS requirements. Yeah? So you are not auditing their variations, you are not auditing their differences, you are not auditing customer requirements.
Could I request that we let Dave finish because he will not be here tomorrow? Then we can keep all the questions. Please have them noted down, all questions regarding training, then we'll compile them. He has a flight tomorrow morning, and he will not take us through so please put all your questions down.
And tomorrow we have a session for IGOM. After that, we will have time for question and answer.
Okay.
So Dave, sorry, continue.
Yeah, thanks for all the contributions with regards to 1110. If you allow me, I would like to tell you our experience with 1110. So within our last organization, we have benefited a lot from Chapter 1110 because while investigating accidents and incidents, we have discovered that one of the root causes is always the training content. So, I was fortunate to have visited more than 200 airports, and I did a lot of spot checks within training materials. So, and we have discovered that the training is the most important element with regards to accidents and incidents. So we delved into details. We did deeper spot checks within training materials. Even exam questions were checked. So within the organization and training organization, and also at the stations. So our purpose was to increase awareness in terms of training. So including our subcontractors at the stations and within the organization training department. So we have benefited a lot from 1110. We were assessing all the sub-elements, content. Okay, where is this item described within the training presentation? Or what we were doing was, we were sampling safety reports and safety investigation results. So let's imagine I do ORM in ISEGO. I review safety reports and risk assessment results. So I see an issue, let's say, related to pushback. There is an incident. So I go to the training material when I'm at the training department. So I'm asking them to show me the training material. So, and also we were able to interrelate hazard identification program with the training material. So where is it described? So have you informed the employee about this hazard, for example? So I was doing risk-based audit, and I was going into deeper levels whenever I was seeing a safety report or safety-related issue within the operations. So when it's the case for security, I go into security training material, deeper levels, even to exam questions, whether the activity was assessed within the exam. So another item was the simplicity of the exam questions. So you go to one organization, you see really difficult questions. So I have seen, for example, in Canada, Toronto Airport, the exam questions were really difficult. So I asked the guy, why are these questions so difficult? So they were taking the activity very serious. So you go to another station, you see very simple questions, 10 questions, let's say for de-icing activity, and 4 questions are related with the same activity. So you do not assess the other activities within the exam. So in the future, we need to go into details within the trainings. So that's my recommendation. So we need to cover all elements within the exam assessments. So that's one fact. Another one is the duration of the training. So I have been to a major airline. So they are training their risk assessors in 2 hours.
As long as that?
Yeah. So you go to another airline, they train their risk assessors for 10 days. Even IQ is not describing any duration for SMS training, so it's a dilemma. It's a big challenge for us. Another training which is very important to me is within ISEGO, the turnaround supervision training, 272. So you go in the material, you see CBT for 1 hour, turnaround coordination. You go to another ground handler, you see 5-day turnaround coordinator training.
Okay.
Thank you. If I may just comment back on that. I'd like to say that training is the most important thing, but there's lots of other aspects. It's the leadership, it's the culture and everything else that sits around it, fully agree. But training contributes. Where we're starting now to give definitions to durations, this gives people an idea that it's probably not 2 hours, but it's also probably not 10 days. It starts to give people an idea, and if they're looking at, well, the recommendation is 8 hours, and I'm doing 1 hour. But we'll look at that, how that falls together as we look at the syllabuses. And the other bit then is about the testing, and that's still something that we want to enhance in the next version, because actually training's easy to write. Anybody can write it. The hardest thing to do is to write the right sort of question to test the learning, not to test recall, to test learning. But anyway, thank you very much for those comments. Go on, there's one more, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with the theoretical part. That's easy. When the checklists are done, everything is set up. I see more the competency at the station. What you're doing with a station where the people have 10 pushbacks a year, compared with another station where they have 200, 300, 500 pushbacks a year. Will the auditor be required to look into how many pushbacks they have met? How is the competency of the people? This is something we are not doing at the moment, but I believe this will be necessary when we are changing the system.
As Santi said that, we are now still we are at the draft stage of this, and once we finalize, we're gonna explain the auditing techniques also, how to do the samples and all those things. And if you have more questions, I request we can take it tomorrow, and we have to finish this fast because we only left with 12 minutes, and he has a flight tomorrow.
Tomorrow? I'm mindful that there's some food or something later, so I'll keep going. Can we, if it's all right with your permission, I want to dive down into some of the modules, because this is what may help you. So let's keep scrolling down. And you can read all this yourselves. Prerequisites, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So now we start getting into job roles, and please remember these are examples to give the ground handling agent a clue to that they should probably define what the job role is, the function and the tasks within it. Let's keep going. And again. And again. Now we keep going, keep going, keep going. Here's where we start to get interesting. Right? This is where you say, if you are a meet and greet person, the expectation is you would have the content of the modules Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, or if you're a check-in agent, you would also receive this, so there's a commonality. It doesn't matter whether I call mine Gen 1, but there's a reference there that says, oh, that refers to this person should have this training. So let's go down into one of these gens and start looking at that. So here we are. If somebody is, let's take Gen, I don't know, stay with this one if you like. So if you are doing Gen 2, that person performing this job role, these functions and these tasks within it, they shall be trained. Remember I said at the start, the one immutable fact, you must be trained for the tasks you do and documented. What should that course contain? So at the headquarter level, you would expect to see that I declare I'm in conformance with 1110 because my course contains safe systems of work, and there's a declaration of what we cover in that, first aid arrangements, and that doesn't mean CPR, that means how to be a first responder, and that may mean calling the qualified people, but you'd see first aid arrangements are covered within the training. You'd see accidents in the workplace and the costs, prevention, all of these topics. For me to declare I'm in conformity with 1110, I have to have these within a training. And the person that performs this task or role shall have received this training with this syllabus elements, be tested accordingly, and be documented. Which I guess, and I'm not presupposing, but when you validate this attestation, you say, oh, that person doing this role, show me the training on this, and they should be able to pull out a document that has these things listed as part of the syllabus, because if you remember, in the management part, it says, on my record, I need to declare what was covered in the training. So it should make it easier. Put it this way, as a ground handler, I can understand what it's telling me to do, so there's a good likelihood that we start to talk the same language and you can be shown what you're expecting to see. I hope. And if there is any deviation, that we can agree, recognise it and improve it. That's the purpose of an audit, isn't it? To help make things better. So, Are we okay so far? Because there's now 7 minutes left. And we go on to general aviation and say, right, there you go. Anyway, stop. Stop. So Gen 10. Look at that we describe now. These are things that were never in here before. And it helps people write a training course. By the end of this session, participants will be able to deliver training effectively, perform appropriate assessments, and this is how a trainer gets qualified. So you would expect, if, as part of it, you say, who delivered the training? He did, she did. Show me their qualification. And you would expect to see these things listed on there and say, oh, right, that's the objective of it. And you'll say, here's what should be included as a minimum, the topics that would be covered as part of any adult education program. And if we keep scrolling down, I think we give a bit of a clue to time. Do we? There we go, look at that. Training applies, so we've got a target audience, who it goes to. Training method theoretical, method of assessment. We have a knowledge check and a practical evaluation. And we say, in this case, I want that within 24 months. We believe that's the right thing to do. Recurrent assessment of a trainer. Go and observe them doing the training. Right, it doesn't say recurrent training. Right. Now,
so it doesn't specify if it's an assessment
right.
or training. So.
And I'm delighted Gurdeep stopped on this one, and I'll speak to him after this, because this is pretty critical. This is my safety critical world in training. If a trainer is not firing on all cylinders and doing a great job, that's damaging the workforce and the new hire people, etc., etc. Most organisations have annual performance reviews, if not quarterly or half-yearly. So any good organisation should be assessing the performance of their individual, assessing their competence to do the job they're paid to do. So we're saying it makes good logic. Now, why 24 months? Well, we got into that one because we said, actually, this is the ICAO standard for dangerous goods. You've got to stay current in that task, and that's 24 months. So we put that in there because we think it'll be okay. So far, nobody from my ground handling world has pushed back and said, that's terrible, that's a bad idea. In fact, my organisation, we're doing it yearly because it's that critical to me. Does that make sense? But I do know it doesn't have the magic 36 number that nobody knows where it came from. Yes, sir.
So let's go back to the training routine. There's no duration of training. So, is there a duration of the course?
No.
Did we put any of them on some of them? No, we didn't. Right. Good question. Within my world, I define it.
So there's more to that question. All of us will attest that we will see ground service providers that will state that they deliver such a program in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, and furthermore, we'll likely, for example, train the trainer. They will likely do this training internally, where perhaps the people are not qualified to deliver adult learning principles, et cetera. So how do you see us addressing that?
Internally in my organisation, firstly, let me give you the reason why we didn't put up a hard time limit on there. I do in my company because it helps for planning purposes and budgeting and everything else. So that's on me. Why we didn't say this shall be 4 days, 8 days, 1 hour, is because there are some training organisations, companies, etc., that invest heavily in sophisticated methods of training. So they might develop some virtual reality suites or something that enables learning to take place quicker than a company that invests little and says it's all classroom. So it makes it technology neutral to that extent. But the key to this is the outcome, to say, Has the learning objectives been met? Have they been measured? Is there a knowledge test at the right level with the right questions at the right testing level? Not what day is it and can you identify a lamppost and a cloud, but at the right level and a competency assessment that checks the outcomes. So it's outcome focused. It's the best I've got for you.
Well, yeah. It still will not take away from providers that say we're doing this in 1 hour. And we know it's impossible.
Can I ask?
Sure.
My question is, IATA has accredited school. So this what you are showing me, are they delivering it today or is it a future plan, number one?
For IATA
if the service provider, if they want to buy outright from IATA, is this already implemented in IATA or is it a future plan, number one? Number two, a service provider who meets these requirements, will it be an accredited training school?
No. A training school concept is taken care by different IATA department. That's
It's not about different department. It is we
For
are
the
looking if
training.
handler aligned with Chapter 11, and if the records are there, right? That's what we are looking. If the trained people, how we train them, and so on. So if the training school of IATA deliver this training, I hope they do, and I'll get you the information. But we are not auditing them. We are auditing handler, and handler needs to assure that if he uses training school, that it's delivered Chapter 11 in the future, not at this moment, but in the future. And Max, back to your on duration of the training. You know the beginning of Chapter 11, we never defined it for various reasons because we were not able to do so, and you don't have it in ISEGO today, right? So I know that you can see training in 2 days and you can see 20 days. But we didn't address it anywhere, not even in IOSA, and I don't think we can.
First edition had duration for the courses.
Yes, but empty. We didn't put any days on it.
It's, what I would cast it back to is the world of driving a car. How long did it take you to learn to drive a car to the standard you could pass a test? Long enough. That may have been a different duration to me. Outcome is we both achieved the standard to get a driving license. It may have been that one school was more intense or took more time or a better instructor but we all met the standard. That's the best I've got. And yes, and at some point, maybe through IATA and this, we may put guidance, but we have to be careful that guidance is not abused from any direction, and say there's a guidance and a tolerance of it. Should not take twice the time or half the time.
Let's say, I think the example that we have is when you have table 1.4.
Yeah.
You see like table 1.4 training, which is taking 1 hour or 2 hours, which is completely unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what we are looking for. What we are looking for.
It's going back to getting a standard that we can audit,
Right.
right?
And it's hopefully we're getting a little bit better. Is it perfect? No. Will it get better? Of course it will, but it'll get better by feedback from your good selves that tell us what would help, and consultation internally to say, is it the right thing to do as well?
Can I suggest something? Effectiveness assessment. So bringing in the concept that you're already bringing in ISEGO, that is coming from IOS as well. Going beyond conformance and so on and so forth. To this particular subject of training, perhaps we do effectiveness assessment using the ideas that you have already, suitability and effectiveness criteria in the works.
And yes, and one day this will grow to the maturity of that, where it says you can assess the effectiveness of your program, not necessarily the efficiency, but the effectiveness.
No, but I mean ourselves even, the auditors doing that effectiveness assessment, as we are already doing for the safety risk management process in ISEGO and in IOS as well.
Okay, I believe that the numbers on there are saying 0, 0, 0, 0, so I think that's the end of the time, but just from my side, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk with you about this and answer any questions. It's always a delight to meet auditors, and again, I'll finish where I started and say thank you, because the work you do and the feedback you give helps improve our business, entirely our culture. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. But I'll request, if you still have questions for training, please write them down, give them to us, we'll compile, and we work towards improving. I think there are so many questions on training, okay? But there's a big difference. There's a big difference. It's tailor-made. It's not the tables that we are currently auditing. It's only that we did not get time to go into the detail, look at the turnaround coordinator training, which is missing in the current ISEGO. Look at the loading supervisor training. There's a lot of tailor-made training that will help airlines and ground handlers to improve. And that is why we are advocating for AHM Chapter 11. It's a good base. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.